All right, so in this video, we're going to solve this rational inequality using test points. Okay, so first step in solving a problem like this is first to make sure that you have 0 on one side of the inequality, which we do already here. Okay, so that's good to go. So we're trying to find if this fraction is less than or equal to 0. We're trying to find where is this fraction less than or equal to 0. Okay, so the first step is going to be finding our critical values. Okay, so find your critical values. And then we'll use test points basically around those critical values to find where this fraction is less than or equal to 0. So where are our critical values? Our critical values will be where the numerator or top of the fraction equals 0, or where the denominator or bottom of the fraction equals 0. Okay, and why is that? Well, because when the numerator equals 0, then we'll be in the situation where this entire fraction will equal 0. And when the denominator equals 0, then the entire fraction will be undefined. Okay, so these are two critical areas where we want to examine. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to factor this to solve it. So I'll have x and x, and then I need to think of two numbers. When you multiply them together, you get -5. And then when you add them together, you get +4. Okay, so that would be +5 and then -1. So when you add those numbers together, you get +4. You multiply them, you get -5. Okay, so when either piece of this product is 0, then the whole thing will be 0. So I can go ahead and solve this by setting both pieces of the product equal to 0. And I get x equals -5 and x equals +1. Okay, so those are my first set of critical values. And then for over here, let's go ahead and do the same method. All right, so multiply them together and you get +2. Add them together, you get +3. So that would be +2 and a +1. Set both pieces of the product equal to 0. Right, and you get x equals -2 and x equals -1. Okay, so let's draw out these critical values on our number line. -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's see, where are we? Let's start with these critical values over here. Now, these critical values, when x equals -5, this entire fraction will be 0, which is part of the solution because we have less than or equal to 0. So -5 will have a solid circle, indicating that -5 is part of the solution. Same thing with 1, +1. Okay, now when x equals -2, the denominator will be 0. Right, and that's an undefined answer, so that will have an open circle at -2 and an open circle at -1. All right, so now I need to use test points. Now I'm going to use test points to find where this fraction is less than or equal to 0. Okay, so let's use test points to find the negatives, right? I'm interested in negative numbers. Okay, so let's see. Let's start with -6. Let's start with down here. Okay, so x equals -6. Now, when I factor, I have, this is the same thing. This thing here, right? This term here is the same as x plus 5 x minus 1 divided by x plus 2, x plus 1, right? This fraction is the same as this fraction. The reason why it's easier looking at it like this is because now I can easily tell what's positive and what's negative. I don't necessarily need to calculate everything here. I just need to plug in -6 and just determine if it's a positive or negative number. So x plus 5, when you plug in -6, right, that's -1, right? So I'm just going to write it's a negative number, right? And then I'm going to be multiplied by x minus 1. When negative 6, it will be negative 7, so that's also a negative number. Divided by negative 6 plus 2, which is still a negative number. Negative 6 plus 1 is still a negative number, right? So negative times negative is a positive. Negative times negative is a positive. Positive divided by positive is a positive, right? So down here we are going to be positive. Oops, let me move my screen back. Okay, so down here I'm going to be positive, which is not part of my solution. I'm looking for negatives. All right, so now let's do another test point. Let's do a test point somewhere between negative 5 and negative 2. I can choose, let's say, negative 4. X equals negative 4. Right, so when I plug in negative 4 here, x plus 5, what am I going to have? X plus 5 when it's negative 4. Negative 4 plus 5 is positive 1, right? So that's a positive number. X plus x minus 1. X minus 1 when x is a negative 4. That will be a negative number, right? Because it'll be negative 4 minus 1, which is negative 5. Negative 4 plus 2 is a negative number. And negative 4 plus 1 is also a negative number, right? Negative 4 plus 1 would be negative 3. So let's see, I have in the numerator, I have a positive times a negative, which is a negative. And then negative times a negative, which is a positive. Now, negative divided by positive will be a negative number. Okay, so right here, I have negative numbers. So that's going to be part of my solution. Okay? Okay, because I'm looking for where I am negative. So next I need to choose a number between negative 2 and negative 1. All right, so let me choose negative, say x equals negative 1.5. Okay, just needs to be any number between negative 2 and negative 1. So halfway between that would be negative 1.5. All right, so I'm plugging it in here. So negative 1.5 plus 5 would be a positive number. Okay, and again, you don't have to calculate what the number is. You just need to know, is it positive or is it negative, right? So negative 1.5 minus 1 will be a negative number. Negative 1.5 plus 2, right? 2 is more than negative 1.5. So I would have a positive number, right? That would be 0.5. And then negative 1.5 plus 1. 1 is less than negative 1.5. So that would be a negative number. It would be negative 0.5. Okay? So positive times negative is negative. Positive times negative is negative. Negative divided by negative is positive. Okay? So right here we are positive, so that's not going to be part of my solution. All right, I have two more areas where I need to consider for test point right here. So somewhere between negative 1 and positive 1. So let's go ahead and choose 0, x equals 0. Let me scroll over. So I'll have, let's see, x, that's not a good color. Let's do a green again. So x equals 0. All right, so 0 plus 5 is positive. 0 minus 1 is negative. Okay. 0 plus 2 is positive, and 0 plus 1 is also positive. So I have negative in the numerator and positive in the denominator. A negative divided by a positive is negative. Okay, so here I have negative numbers, so this will be part of the solution. Okay, lastly, I just need a test point somewhere over here. I could choose 2 or 3. I'll go ahead and choose x equals 2. Okay, so plugging in x equals 2. 2 plus 5 is 7, so that's a positive number. 2 minus 1 is a positive number. It'd be 1. 2 plus 2 is 4, so that's positive. And 2 plus 1 is 3, which is also positive. Okay, so what do I have? I have positive divided by positive, which is a positive number. So over here I would be positive, so that's not part of the solution. Okay, so what's my solution? How do I write it? I am this fraction, right? This fraction here, which is the same as the original question, I just have factored it. It will be negative in these green areas here on the number line. So how do I write that as my solution? I could have a bracket for -5 until I get to -2, and I'll use a parentheses there. And I'll union that with a parenthesis for -1, right? Because -1 is not included in the solution because that's where the denominator equals 0, which is undefined. Okay, until I get to 1, and I'll have a bracket there for that solution. Okay, so there you have it. This is the solution for where x can be such that this rational inequality is true.